1.
Okay.
Beth, can you call roll, please?
Austin,
Present.
Hall,
Here.
Jacobson,
Here.
Leffler,
Here.
McNulty,
Here.
Murray,
Here.
Smith.
Here.
From CCS, we have Malinowski, Wishmeyer, and Stonebringer.
All right. Does anybody have any additions to the agenda?
Could we, Rebecca, I meant to email you about this before, but then I didn't because life. Could we maybe just give a little bit of an additional update on the database management meeting? I mean, maybe we can just do that under your report, maybe. But just so we put that somewhere in there, because I've gotten additional comments from people outside of the meeting. Good times. Nothing bad, just questions.
That fit under committees and groups, reports under committees and groups?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, that works. I know we don't usually like give an update, but yeah, that works. Thanks, Sarah.
We'll call on you then. Let me make a note so I don't forget. Okay. Anything else? We have no public, so I'm guessing no public comment, but if anybody's lurking, you can just say so. Otherwise, we are at consent agenda with the minutes of March 10th, monthly financial statements, bills for payment, and update to fiscal accountability policy all wrapped together in the consent agenda. Is there anything that anybody needs to pull out or discuss?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Seconded. Jacobson.
Beth, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Austin,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
McNulty,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes,
Smith.
Yes.
thank you. All right, moving right along, we have business. The first order of business is the parental leave policy with a recommendation from bylaws and policy. Heidi, is that you? Bylaws and policy?
It is.
Do you want to share anything about that before we?
Well, we had a good discussion, very much in support of the policy. The changes that we recommended are highlighted in red, starting on page 11. So if you have any questions for us about this, we'd be happy to help.
No question, just a minor grammatical thing that where it says an employee must continue to pay they portion, it should just say their portion. So minor grammatical thing.
Noted, thank you. I did some
Yep.
find and replace.
Yeah, I totally get it. I did that for a presentation I did this morning and it replaced a bunch of stuff in my email address and I'm like, oh, annoying. Yep.
Can you just, I have no objection to it. I'm just trying to read the difference between that first line, the employee will continue to be eligible versus what's crossed off. I don't know if my brain is just not wrapping around it.
We were just trying to be more clear and
Okay,
concise with the change, so there's no meaning change, just a clarity.
okay. Fine by me. All right.
Since we have this from bylaws and policy, we don't need a second, right? Can I ask
just
for the
have
vote?
one.
Oh,
Can I
sorry,
just ask
Pam.
one question too, on when both parents are eligible employees? So basically both parents can't take leave at the same time, but they could take it consecutively. Is that correct? Right?
I think my intention in writing it was that they could decide.
Okay.
But that is a great point. We don't have any. not
Right,
thinking about
right.
it currently.
I didn't
but
find
it
it
might-
particularly clear is the only thing for me. So I don't know
Yeah.
if we need more clarification on that.
I read it that if there were two parents, they could take 8 weeks and they could take it at the same time. Consecutively, that's what I,
Consecutively is in a row.
Yeah.
Concurrently is at the same time. So
Do we feel it should be concurrently, consecutively, or intermittently? and give
I mean,
them all the
based,
options.
I mean, if we're kind of letting them decide what works best for them, I think that we need to include all of that, right? That would be.
Sure. I mean, the other option is not to put any of it and to say to be used based on parental need and discussion.
Yeah.
And then we don't have to list everything. Either way is fine, I think. Are we planning to hire Matt?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm fine with Kate's suggestion about, you know, kind of as needed and as per discussions or something like that.
So we could just say, when both parents are eligible employees, both parents may request to use up to 8 weeks of paid parental leave, period.
Yeah, let's do
Yeah.
that.
Third option.
I like it.
Woohoo.
Sorry.
No, ma'am, that's a good
Good.
catch.
Making it good.
And this might be helpful because soon the state will have something to say about this too, right?
So now we'll read, when both parents are eligible employees, both parents may request to use up to 8 weeks of paid parental leave within 12 months of the birth or adoption.
Yes.
Yes, perfect.
So then I'm going to make a motion to approve the policy as amended by bylaws and policy committee with the additional changes as outlined for when both parents are eligible employees. Because we made a change from what bylaws, right? We have to do a special motion, like a separate motion, right?
So can you just move as amended and then we get a second and then go from there?
Sure.
Yeah.
I move to adopt the policy recommended by bylaws and policy committee as amended.
I'll second that.
Is that Heidi? Is it
Pam.
second?
Leffler.
Oh, sorry, Pam. Okay.
That's okay.
Okay, we're good? We're ready for a roll call vote?
I'll start with Leffler.
Yes.
McNulty,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Austin,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes. Innovative Development Partner Program. What kind of update do we have for that?
Oh, well, it's all just super thrilling. The most administrative update is that Innovative has now said, we just don't have to sign the SaaS agreement until we go live, which is what we asked them for in November of last year. So it would have been helpful and saved us all a lot of time and money if they had just done that last year. So that contract is not signed yet, and I do not anticipate it will be signed until probably early 2022. We have already signed the development partner program agreement, but that is that cancelable agreement. And again, our issue with the SaaS agreement was that it wasn't cancelable, and we wanted to make sure we weren't in a pickle. So I am pleased about that, but I'm sure Dennis is going to miss talking to me about it. And then just the updates in your packet, we are looking to set up what will essentially be like a whole CCS Vega instance in this month, maybe early next month. And that's really just, that'll be attached to our training server. And that's just so we can start working on documentation, play around, library staff can see it, we can see it. But they're still developing the consortial features. So it's not going to be like what we have later. It's going to be everybody's materials all coming up at once, as if you were all branches of one library. And that'll be training data. And that training data is actually pretty old. It's from January. So we can't update it because we're on 2 different versions on training and production. So once production is upgraded, when they fix the bug that exists in training, then we'll be able to refresh our data. And then, as noted here, in July or August, set up the multi-branch version of Vega that will be tied to the production database. So people can really see what things are going to look like, how changes made in real time are going to look, and all of those things. In the meantime, Deborah sent out on Monday, and she sent out obviously the final version, but there is a copy in your packet of the call for beta libraries. So we are looking for at least 4 libraries to participate with us in the initial testing phase. We are asking for libraries to fill out, we're calling it a short application, but it's really just to help us gather some information about, you know, what it would look like to be a beta partner with you. We had originally said we were only going to do 4 libraries, but depending on interest, we may expand that up to 8, just to try to get some diversity amongst the participants. So we'll see what that looks like as libraries volunteer or don't volunteer. But if we got 4, we'd be pumped.
How many people have volunteered so far?
1.
We're planning on it, so.
Okay, because
Um,
we're talking about it tomorrow at our ILS committee meeting.
Yeah, I spoke to my tech services and head of public services, so we'll be filling out the application. We figured you'd need a smaller library.
Thank you.
Well, that's helpful because Cary is in a totally different geographic area than Northbrook too. So if we do it, if I can convince my staff to do it. Okay, cool.
Any other questions on the program or where things stand right now? Okay, then that is all I have for that agenda item.
All right. COVID-19, still a thing.
Yeah. Again, this is super brief. Also, CCS staff have moved forward with the updates that we talked about at governing board. I just wanted to let you all know that that work was happening. Our advisory and technical group meetings are going to be virtual at least through the end of the calendar year, and then we'll reassess in October and communicate out what that looks like. We will continue to, so this is where things are a little bit dicey. I would like to keep doing virtual governance meetings as long as OMA and the state allow us to. And then, so I'm monitoring, you know, the legal alerts from all of our attorney pals on those various bills, and I'm sure you are too. So unless anyone has an objection to that or like really wishes executive committee could meet in person, nobody looks like it. So we'll continue to meet online. If it comes to a point where the state says, get over it, start meeting in person, and we are not sure, we can have another discussion as a group and see how we want to approach OMA given our gray status.
Unless, of course, that one bill passes and says that we definitely are, well, that's for FOIA, not for OMA. But then I
Yeah,
feel
and
like
both
if
of
it
those
applies to
bills,
one, it would.
There's an OMA bill and a FOIA bill right now that are out in the world. But I asked about them at PPC because I was like, hey, ILA, tell me what's going on. Those both got referred back to the rules committee. So they don't think any action will happen on them this session. So the earliest anything would happen with them is November. So they're not,
Okay.
PPC, well, Derek and Diane don't think that those are real things that we need to worry about.
Okay.
So then,
I was concerned about those as well. I was like, well, that would be clarity, but it's a non-issue, they think.
so the governing board and executive committee would all remain virtual? Is that what you're saying? Okay. So I thought
Yeah.
part of what we liked about CCS was the ability to network and meet in person. And that was
Yeah. Marcin is looking at options for hybrid meetings, but we certainly have some technological and logistic issues with that.
Yeah, hybrid challenge.
Hybrid meetings, as someone who like with Rails, it is,
I know, they're tough. I think Rails is a good example of how they have, I think, the most appropriate technology an organization could have, and it's still challenging.
Because there's still that lag.
Technical groups, maybe alternating and doing like winter meetings remote and then like spring and fall meetings in person. So that could be an option as well if we do have the opportunity to continue meeting virtually. I think, oh, it must have been with bylaws and policy. I'm like, this came up somewhere and I don't remember where. So it's bylaws and policy or budget and finance. The other option would be to hold committee meetings virtually, because I think we have been getting better attendance with virtual committee meetings. and then to still have governing board meetings in person when we feel comfortable doing that, with a call-in option, but not a full hybrid setup. So we would still strive for that in-person quorum with governing board. So I think those are all options on the table, but we don't have to decide yet, is where I'm at.
I will, just to kind of give you a heads up, at the directors meeting that I think most of us were at on Monday, the NSLS group, I was surprised at how many people were like, yeah, let's do in person. I'm like, no, we're not doing in person next month. We're going to just do virtual. We'll talk about it next month. But like, I was surprised at how many people were willing to just like jump right into that. So just FYI, people, there's at least a group of people. I'm perfectly happy to continue remotely for a while. I was surprised how many people were like at initial first glance, like, yeah, let's do it.
I think part of that was people want to show off their
Yeah, new
renovated
spaces.
buildings, and they're anxious
sure.
to, and they're just reopening and all that. I do have one issue with the governing board meetings, and maybe you can address this with the individual libraries, but we're meeting virtually. So if there's not really an excuse for there not to be an attendee from each library. I've seen a couple libraries that haven't been sending alternates, and I think that maybe they need reminders.
Yeah, we can go back through the minutes and check on that and see if there's a pattern. You are sharper than I am, and I have not observed that, but
Well,
have
that's
some
always
brain
been
fog.
something with governing board anyway. I mean, I was president of CCS many, many years ago, before we had any options. And there were a couple libraries that continuously didn't send anybody, and it just, there was no communication. And I think it's important even just to have a person to hear what's going on, so you're not just seeing it in the minutes.
Well, and it's about prioritizing, right? That this should be a priority to have your library represented. I know when I was president, there was one library that was just not, that was showing a pattern. We ended up resolving it and it was fine, but it was like, oh yeah, this is clearly, I mean.
Yeah, we'll take another look and then maybe coordinate with Sarah to send out a reminder as her outgoing president, as her presidency wraps up in the next month or so, she can go out laying down the law.
I'll do it.
So
I
for
will.
the
Like,
governing
don't be
board-
a jerk to Pam. Come to the meetings.
I like it. Thank you for bringing that up, Diane.
For the governing board meeting in person, like I'm indifferent, so I don't want to push anybody to meet who is uncomfortable meeting at this point. I don't see the win in us meeting in person. Like I think it was good to meet in person and good to see everybody's libraries and get lunch afterwards with people and stuff like that. But like, my board's been meeting in person for a few months, and they wanted to do that a long time ago. They wanted to do that right away. So like, and it hasn't been a problem. We just distance and wear masks, and even that can be something. But I think there's a difference between 7 people or 8 people or 9 people and 30 people. And so I'm fine with this, but also like, we are going to be in phase 5. Library staff have all had the opportunity to get vaccinated now. So if they've chosen not to get vaccinated, it's on them. It's their call, and except for the people who do have medical qualifications, of course. And so I guess my question is, what are we basing this off of besides, anxiety? And if it's just anxiety, like, and I think I'm fine with it, but I keep going back to like, what are we basing the decisions off of? Are we basing off the governor decision? And like you said, the OMA stuff still is there. So we're basing off that, but if that disappears really quickly for us, are we ready to go back in person? And if we're going to be, do we need to start preparing governing board members to that possibility happening in 2, 3, 4 months? Because I know with all of you, my practice has been like planting seeds months before we do stuff, just so people can chew on the idea and then make it their own and then move forward. And is it time for us to start planting seeds, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think those are all really helpful comments, and I definitely want to make sure we are giving people notice. In terms of like what we're basing it off of, what my intention was to monitor what libraries are doing, not so much for their boards, but for in-person programming, since the numbers are more similar to programming than to a library board meeting, as Mick
Do
just
you have
pointed out.
access to Richard's spreadsheet?
It's
No, so if there is an existing spreadsheet, I'd love to see it.
We're not
So
going to
yeah,
do that,
That
Sarah.
was what I was going to do, was just monitor if
Well,
libraries are going back to in-person programming, and that's something that they're, because we'd have to go to a library to have a meeting. So I don't want to show up with 40 people at a library where people aren't allowed to have story times.
That's an interesting
so-
point, but a lot of us, and I see why you're choosing that. We're going to start doing indoor programming September 1st, but the reason behind that is because it takes us a long time to get our calendar and our newsletter together. And so we could, like, we might start doing indoor drop-in programs in June or July. And so like, and that we won't have the newsletter because we don't want to start scheduling a whole schedule and then have to kill it all because of an uptick or something like that. So that, I think that's an important data point and a valuable data point. It's just, I don't know. I keep hammering this because like we need to base our decisions off of something. And I know we haven't, like Kate tried her best to get us something and other people tried her best and Heidi's trying her best to get us something now. But like, to me that, you know, that is
We're not going to
apples
get anything. I'm totally signing the letter and I'm going all in, but they're not going to give us anything.
And that's true. And but it's just, I'm just saying apples to apples is not, this isn't, using that as a metric is not necessarily apples to apples.
So, but I want to add one more thing onto that, because governing board is made up of the directors of the libraries, and the staff look to us for how we're behaving and what we're doing. We are not doing any in-person meetings other than one-on-one meetings within individual staff's, you know, offices where people are still masked and 6 feet apart. 96% of my staff in 5 days will be 2 weeks beyond their final dose. So like, I have only 4 people in this building that are not vaccinated, but yet we are still following all of the safety protocols. If we start doing governing board, I guarantee you, not all of my staff, but a large chunk of my staff are going to be like, Kate's now going to in-person meetings. She's going to start making us do them, even though we're waiting until later in the summer to start in-person department meetings, and then in September starting in-person meetings. So we also have to think about kind of like how we're stacking things and how we as the executive directors are going to be perceived in terms of ramping things back up. Because I've been trying to just, like I shared my calendar, right, that I put together so that we're slowly just moving people forward so that we're not ripping off the Band-Aid. And yeah.
And I'm totally comfortable with that. And I'm not trying to be the open up police. I'm really not, but I'm trying to say, I'm like, we're meeting in person. We have committees that are meeting in person now. And we have the leadership team is starting the meeting in person next week. And it just, we're there. And I'm not sure who else is there, but we're there now. And my staff would be totally fine. So like one library's experience is different than a library's experience. And I don't think we should hold back for the most conservative or whatever you want to say when it comes to this. But I'm also not saying we should do it. You know, I'm just saying like, I just want to know what I'm basing this decision off of, besides, you know, anxiety, honestly. And this is the same exact conversation I have with my staff a lot. And like, I totally feel like we could be opening a lot more now, but we're also like, okay, we need to ease into things. And I think we just all have we're walking people into the beach, and some beaches are a lot more shallow and some much more deep. It turns out mine's a little deeper than everybody else's, if you will. So I'm not arguing, and I'm not saying I want a date or anything like that. I'm just saying like, yes, the programming is a good data point, and you know, scheduling these things out. We want to schedule them so people can plan them out. So I could buy that as a good data point. Like, hey, Mick, we have the July, and we want to get the September and the whichever of the 3 months I can't add right now, but November, we want to get those all scheduled. And And changing that is too much work. So let's just do that and then we'll revisit then. That would be a good data point. That's kind of based off the programs. So I'm just trying to look for what data I can use in my own head to make sense of this.
So definitely July is going to be virtual.
Yes.
Like, I would assume at this point that October is going to be virtual if the governor allows it, but that executive order, I think, expires May 29th. So if that does not get renewed, we're just gonna like skirt around and have the July meeting virtual, and then we'll have the October meeting in person. But if that is renewed, then we will go back to the list of library programming and make a decision, I would say, by the end of August on what that October meeting is gonna look like. Pam, does that work for you as our incoming pres?
Sure. I will say that I do fall on the more conservative side of opening up. So this will be an interesting conversation. But I think that what you outlined, Rebecca, makes total sense.
Okay. And thank you for the spreadsheet, and Deborah for the rail sheet. I have them open and I'm like, no, stop it. Stop.
Yeah, I must have missed that Rails added that because I didn't realize they had.
No, they had that for a long time.
Can we?
No, the programming questions that they added. I didn't
Yeah, no.
realize.
They've been there for a while.
Okay, I apparently haven't updated it in a while.
And
So my management team of 8 of us have been meeting in person in our large meeting room at different, separate tables with our masks on for months. We had our first in-person staff meeting last month. Only 2 people would not come because we were doing it in person, but we had it in the main part of the building where everybody could space out. We're having our next one in our meeting room, but we are having a book sale next week. So we'll see how the public reacts to that.
Let me know.
Is it an inside book sale?
Yes.
Inside the building?
They're going to be in the meeting room in our flex zone. They only get half of our flex zone this time because the other half still has furniture in it. But we are working with them to set it up in a way that they can limit how many people are in the room and everything. So it'll be interesting to see, but we're trying to do each month, we're adding something. We added passports May 1st. We added chairs back to tables May 1st. So
did you add all the tables? This is
we
not
had all our
important to
tables out.
this
We
executive
added
committee,
chairs to one chair to each
meeting.
table.
It's,
Yeah, the lounge.
well, we've had, okay, so yeah, I mean, I think that this is the thing, is like we are all over the map.
Yes,
And
and
it's
I think
fascinating.
that's one of the problems is we each have our own comfort levels, and all along I've been more comfortable than a lot of my staff, but now staff are kind of getting back to, oh yeah, we have our shot and we can work with the patrons, and it's so like Mick said, it's comfort levels, it's baby steps, and I think my concern is that you don't just say, oh, next meeting we're meeting in person. I think we start kind of feeding that out now so that we can maybe discuss it at the next meeting, how people feel about meeting in person again.
Okay.
And we're not talking about October yet. I know. Sorry, Sarah.
That's okay. Just want to kind of wrap it all up.
Yeah, I'll wrap. For the October meeting, if we decide to meet in person, I'd be happy to host. I think we've got the newest building, and so we've got the newest HVAC system and all that stuff. So if people are uncomfortable, and we've got a large space, so we could host if people wanted to. If someone else has a newer building, that'd be fine too. I'm just suggesting if that might be an extra level of comfort.
Because Alex's is the newest renovation.
But he might have a smaller meeting room.
But I'm not sure what,
yeah.
I'm not sure what they did with their HVAC system.
Yeah, I think they did something. I can't remember what though.
Okay, I don't think we're going to solve all this right now.
No.
I think we need to solve all this right now. So I'm gonna wrap it up, and we're gonna move to the next thing, which is not a whole lot, but I know Kate, you're on the list. So I think that sticking with the plan of trying to meet virtually in July, unless we're forced to have to meet in person in July, I think if we meet virtually in July, that could potentially be our last virtual governing board meeting. So we should have information out to governing board by then. Before then would be better, saying that we are potentially meeting in person in October. And then I don't know, I can't remember what everybody's meeting rooms look like, but perhaps if we could gather some information about who has the largest spaces. I know, we hosted governing board once and everybody was shoulder to shoulder, literally. So we're not a good option for having any sort of spacing. So if we can figure out who has the biggest meeting rooms, then maybe we'll ask those libraries to pencil in governing board on their meeting room schedules so that their room is available in case we do need to meet in person starting in October.
I would argue that maybe largest combined with newest HVAC and
Sure.
like what the HVAC,
Once we
right?
get
Like having Rebecca kind of assess the,
rooms are, then we can assess, from that point. But I think if we're going to try and gather too many data points at one time, it's going to get very confusing. So let's just figure out who has the biggest rooms and then we can assess from there who would even be qualified to host the meeting. And then we can narrow it down from that list. Good?
I like it.
Okay. All right. That's all the attention that I think we need to give COVID today. Sure, taking up a lot of our time. The next thing we have on the list is adjourning to closed session to review minutes and then reconvening to open session for reports. I'm okay doing it in that order. Typically, we do closed session last at our meetings, but whatever everyone is most comfortable with. If we are ready to adjourn to closed session to review minutes, then I would entertain a motion for that.
So
I'll
moved.
make that motion, Smith.
Okay, I'll second Jacobson.
To go into closed session, can you state the statute? Do we have it up on there?
On the agenda.
Okay. Okay. I will make a motion that pursuant to 5 ILCS 120-2 C21, discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under this act, whether for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 2.06, that we go into closed session to do so.
Thank you, Heidi. And we had a second from Mick. So do we need to do a roll call to go into closed session? When it- call the roll.
Yes. Paul,
yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
McNulty,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
I'm going to stop the recording.